Good afternoon, everybody. Aaron Keller here on the Law and Crime Network as we walk you through what's happening in the Florida prosecution of former police officer Nouman Raja. He is the former cop who pulled in front of a stranded motorist named Corey Jones, got out of the car, and what happened next is disputed. Raja claims he identified himself as a police officer. Prosecutors say a roadside assist recording made by the victim right there completely disputes that. No identification of as a police officer according to that recording. What actually happened at that scene and who was the first aggressor? That's the big question for jurors in this case, where Nouman Raja is raising a stand-your-ground defense to charges that he attempted to murder Corey Jones. Corey Jones did not survive that altercation, but surprisingly, prosecutors are going after this as an attempted murder case. Let's start right off the top with that that roadside assistance and the 911 calls placed.
Stop. I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah. Get your fucking hands up. Get your fucking hands up. Go.
Oh my gosh. There's gunshots.
All units, signal 33.
All right, you got your radio now?
Hotel.
No, hold on, not yet.
All right, I got units coming.
Mail and dreads on the off ramp behind
All right,
Devil
man,
Street.
thank you.
Mail's outside.
All right, stay on the phone there, all right, buddy?
Temple. Unknown where the mail
All
went.
right.
Guns off one. I'm by the radio now.
26. Drive
All right,
mail
hang
hit
up the
3 to
phone,
4
bud.
times. 51.
All right,
FD 51 stage. 350. We're in the parking lot.
I'm not in the parking lot. I'm right on the off ramp. He ran across into the grass towards 95. Guys, right here. He ran in that direction. I lost visual of him. 348. I'm on 95. 55. They went on.
That's a combination of the roadside assist call, the 911 call, 911 radio traffic, all put together by the FBI to try to help jurors make sense of what was happening, stacking all those calls together, mixing them into one file, playing them out in real time. Joining me now, Ann Bremner, Gene Rossi, both attorneys. I'll throw this question on the table here. Gene, let me start with you. Listening to that again, what goes through your mind?
A couple of things, Aaron. One, he seems to be ready for bear at the beginning of that. Number two, the issue that he identified himself, and I brought this up last week, unless he said it off camera, if you will, way before the tape started recording him, there's no way he identified himself. And the third thing that's striking to me, for someone who just took someone's life, he seems really calm, and that troubles me. It troubles me.
I can see that. Ann Bremner, your reaction.
I think we talked before that I represented a lot of police officers over the years, Seattle, Chicago, Portland, for a long, long time. So I've seen officers that are kind of calm after a shooting. I mean, it's kind of they're in shock, but they're trying to be professional and they keep their composure. So, you know, that's kind of the other side of it. And then identifying himself, if he said he did, and it's not on the tape, of course, that's a problem. But the other part of this is the way he speaks to him. He certainly sounds like a cop. I mean, that's one thing that went through my mind. He sounds exactly like a cop.
Well, he sounds like him, but he could have been mistaken for somebody who was trying to carjack the guy. I mean, if somebody like that approached me by the side of the road at that hour of the night, I would assume I was being robbed.
Well, you know, absolutely. And that's why when you look at a case like this, and his superiors said that he was completely, you know, it was incredible. He didn't identify himself, that he wasn't clothed, showing that he was an officer and all those kinds of things. And that's why they got rid of him and why he was charged.
All right, let's listen to some of the interview that Nouman Raja gave with investigators. We saw a little bit of the tape there. This was just a matter of hours, between 4 and 5 hours after pulling the trigger, when Nouman Raja spoke with other officers in the department investigating the shooting.
And I didn't think there was anybody in there. And as I got close to the vehicle, and the door swung open, and this guy jumps up and I immediately got out of the van, and he's like, I'm okay, man. And at which point I said, hey man, police, can I help you? And second I said police, he jumped back And I clearly remember him drawing and pointing a gun at me. I saw that silver muzzle, and he had, I can swear on this, he had a Laser Max laser in the guide rod in the gun, and I saw that red light of that Laser Max flashing at me, and I immediately just shouted, "Drop the gun!" And sorry. Do you see this plant right here? This big bush?
Clump?
Yeah, the big clump. Just where the ditch is right there in front of it, kind of like, he was in that area, and that's when he did the spin. Then I was yelling, I was like, "Drop the gun, drop the gun." And I saw him go like this. And I remember saying to myself, "Aim." I still remember, and I was like, "Aim!" And I put that front sight right in his center mass, and I squeezed. I believe 2 rounds.
Okay.
And I saw him drop, at which point, and when he dropped and everything, and I started going up, and I couldn't see him. And I was like, I lost sight of him. And they're like, "Go get your radio, go get your radio." And I started to go, and I was like, just pedaling back and everything. And the guys came, and I was like, "Look, I lost."
That was a police recording of Officer Nouman Raja, now facing attempted murder charges over the shooting and ultimately the killing of stranded motorist Corey Jones right there at that interstate off-ramp where that recording occurred. That recording just a few hours after the gunfire erupted early in the morning hours on the side of that Florida interstate. Let's break this down now. Attorney Gene Rossi, Attorney Ann Bremner, along with me here on the Law and Crime Network. So, Gene, look, I keep going back to police tactics on this, and I was always told by police officers when I was doing stories as a reporter, heck, even when I was taking driver's ed in high school, that unless you are wanted by the FBI for some serious stuff, a plainclothes officer will never pull you over, will not try to approach you in this fashion. So where do the police tactics come into play here? And should this guy have ever been acting in this fashion?
Well, I know Ann has a lot more experience representing police officers, but I have a lot of experience. I work with probably 1,000 FBI agents, ATF, DEA, countless local law enforcement officers. Here's my gut, my Malcolm Gladwell gut. Blink. This guy scares the living daylights out of me, and I'll tell you why. Big lie here. He says, after he said, "I'm good," Corey, he says, Mr. Raji said, "Police, can I help you?" Okay, that is the biggest lie in American history, because the recording doesn't show that. Number 2, Aaron, you hit the nail on the head. Why are you shooting at a guy who's running away from you if you're in plain clothes? I'd like Ann to address that.
Yeah, Ann, go ahead. I mean, I'm noticing that his version of things does not match up with the transcript of that recording.
No, and I'm not here to defend the officer. I can say, and I don't have the experience with the FBI, et cetera, but I've been on call for police shootings for decades. So anytime, or any kind of death, officer-involved death. So it could be 3 in the morning, it usually is, but at any given time, I've responded to these and done walkthroughs. And so I look at this one and I say the same thing. I mean, obviously he lied, about saying, "Oh, I'm an officer, can I help you?" Because we don't have that on the tape. The other thing I see in this, in the walkthrough, is there's kind of that, that camaraderie with officers, where they after the scene, after something like this traumatic happens, like they kind of like support each other. "Hey, buddy," all this kind of, support in that walkthrough. And you can see him getting energized by that. And the fact of the matter is, given what we know, I watched this with a real jaundiced eye, like we all do and say, wow, I mean, like, he really sealed his fate, I think, right there.
I see it too. I see the camaraderie. It leads me to question, okay, look, what's exactly happening here? Is this a therapy session, or are the authorities trying to get to the bottom of what happened? And of course, look, they ultimately did file charges here. So this in no way was a therapy session for long, if we can use that sarcastic term for it. We're going to take a break here on the Law and Crime Network. We'll be back with more on the Nouman Raja case out of Florida when we return. The prosecutor had a strong opening statement there characterizing that altercation between Officer Nouman Raja and Corey Jones, who had broken down near the side of the road. It resulted in an argument. It resulted in gunfire. Attorney Gene Rossi is here with me now, along with Attorney Ann Bremner. So, Attorney Bremner, let me start with you here on this one. The prosecutor put a lot of emphasis into making Raja look like the first aggressor here, and he acted it all out. It's entertaining to watch, but is it an accurate accurate description of what actually happened at that scene?
Well, we don't know that yet, and it better be, because its opening statement outlines we expect the evidence to show, and you better be right. If you're not, then of course you're going to be held to it in closing. But the fact of the matter is, the accurate depiction is in the tape. So I thought he was a little bit, his tone was all the same, kind of like a little bit over the top in the situation for the case. I mean, I think that this is a kind of case that's so strong for the prosecution that you don't have to be yelling at the jury.
Yeah, Gene Rossi, let me throw this question your way here. A good point, Ann. So, was the prosecutor overselling this and acting in such a way that would make the jury see Raja as a first aggressor just merely because of the way the prosecutor sold the case there?
Ann brought up a good point. It's good to be passionate and fervent as a prosecutor in closing, rebuttal and obviously opening. But Ann hit the nail on the head. You can't seem borderline deranged. And I'm not saying he was, but he was getting a little bit over his skis when he was talking about events after the tape ended. He's sort of speculating, and he should be careful on that.
Yeah, I mean, you could run into real trouble here, because here's the problem that I'm having is that I'm envisioning this altercation the way the prosecutor sold it, with the pauses, the body language and all of that, and not necessarily the way I'm hearing it on the recording, because we just have sound. We can guess what the body language might have looked like, but the prosecutor did an effective or an ineffective, depending on viewpoint, job in basically trying to characterize what happened between these two men on that exit ramp. We're going to take a break here on the Law and Crime Network and come back with more analysis in the Nouman Raja attempted murder case out of Eastern Florida, when we come back. You can tell these defense attorneys are very polished. They're very classy in court. Ann Brender, let me ask you your reaction to watching some of their opening statement and them continuously bringing up the notion that this is self-defense.
I think they've done a very nice job, especially when you juxtapose it against the prosecutor's kind of over-the-top performance so far. And bringing up self-defense, in my state, the state has the burden of proving the absence of self-defense beyond a reasonable doubt. We're not the only state that's that way. So, I mean, that's a big deal. Officers have the right and the duty to use force under the jury instructions and to stand their ground, and all these kinds of concepts come into play. That's what they're going to rely on, and hopefully that'll carry the day for them. But, under these facts, it's going to be really, really a tough defense.
Let's listen to some more of the defense's opening statements now from Florida.
This photograph that I'm showing you and the next several photographs that I'm going to show you were done 2 weeks after this incident occurred. What happened was, the morning this incident occurred, Mr. Raja gave a voluntary cooperative statement to investigators. You're going to see the entire video walkthrough of the incident. And when he gave that video walkthrough, he told the investigators that he saw something very specific when Corey Jones pointed the firearm at him. He said that he saw a red flickering light around the barrel of the handgun when Mr. Jones pointed it at him.
All right, those were some of the defense's opening statements in the Nouman Raja attempted murder trial out of Palm Beach County, Florida. Gene Rossi and Brender here to discuss this case. Gene, I want to throw the same question to you about trial advocacy. I like the way the defense was bringing jurors into this case from more of a learned perspective, bringing up the photo and saying, look at the barrel of the gun. This is going to become very important. If I were on the jury, I would be leaning into that and saying, oh, he's explaining facts to me, not trying to force me down a particular path of conclusion.
I think you're 100% right. And I got to agree with Ann. And Ann, say something really irrational so I can disagree with you. But I have to. I don't like to agree all the time, but Ann's right. The prosecutor, he did a good job, very passionate, and I got to give him an excellent grade. But this opening by the defense, you know, representing a defendant is like poker. You're dealt a hand and you play your hand the best you can. He is doing a phenomenal job. His tone, his demeanor, he's not yelling, and he's focusing on that gun. The gun is the key to his defense. It's what Ann said, self-defense.
Ann, I'll give you your chance. Are you going to say something completely crazy that Gene Rossi can attack you on?
I was thinking about it, but I won't.
Okay, you won't.
But I totally agree with Gene on everything too, and I think that's exactly, I mean, spot on. And I think that, you know, you just keep talking about a gun and a gun and a gun and a gun, you know, about the fear and everything else and self-defense. You know, it's going to carry the day, I think, with some jurors. I like kind of the Atticus Finch kind of shucks, thorough, you know, kind of demeanor, and I think he's got that.
I agree. Look, I mean, trial advocacy is an important part of these cases. This is a case where the jury just has to reconcile the facts with the law. But it's good to see both sides represented by passionate and stable advocates here. So let's take a break. We'll be back with more analysis on the Nouman Raja attempted murder case in a moment. Victim Corey Jones was shot on the side of a Florida interstate exit ramp by police officer Nouman Raja. The big question in this case, which we're waiting to pick up in a matter of a quarter of an hour here, is who was the first aggressor? Was it the officer who pulled up in an unmarked van without a uniform and, according to the prosecution, without properly identifying himself? Or was it Corey Jones, the man who was stranded and the man who died? Did Jones pull his gun first after the officer did identify himself? What was going on here? Some of the early testimony in this case involved comments like these from a bandmate and a friend to the victim.
Home, and for the most part, relaxing.
Yeah, I was like in my bed actually, about to crash out, but you know.
But Corey Jones called you, and you got out of bed and decided to go and help him.
Yeah, of course.
After only knowing him for just, what was it, 3 months?
Yeah, something like that.
What kind of person was he?
He was really, really nice person.
I give you a little leeway. Let's keep it at that. And
So when you get to where Corey Jones is located,
yes.
what did you all do?
We just tried to like mess with a couple things. We popped it. Well, he already had the hood popped, and then I went in the car, tried to start it while he was messing with some stuff, and then I mean, we were both not mechanics, so we didn't really, it wasn't very effective what we were doing, but so then he had mentioned to get oil. We had tried to call we got road rangers over there because I had used them before, so I was like, hey, call these guys, or I think I called them, I can't remember. And so none of, you know, they came and they couldn't help, so I ended up.
Let me stop you right there.
Yeah, go ahead.
When you arrived, did Corey Jones appear to be agitated to you because his car was broken down?
No, not at all.
Had his demeanor changed at all from the time you left him at playing the gig to when you went to help him out with his broken down vehicle?
No, he was like a little frustrated, but he wasn't in a bad mood by any means. He was just like, he knew we were gonna figure out eventually, you know, something to figure it out, you know. Obviously it didn't work out, but.
That man was a friend to victim Corey Jones, a bandmate, in fact. Attorney Gene Rossi, I'm going to throw a difficult evidence question your way now, so you better remember your evidence rules here. So we're getting all of this testimony about the victim's character here, and that can sometimes be a slippery slope.
Well, first off, it's impermissible, and you saw the judge go, I'm going to give you a little leeway and let you finish. You can't get on a stand and say, you know, I'm a friend of the decedent, and he was an Eagle Scout, a great guy, this, that, and the other thing. You can't do that. It's irrelevant, and it's prejudicial, and it's irrelevant.
And Bremner, I know sometimes you can get a little bit of this in to try to show that the victim wasn't the first aggressor. Is that possibly what prosecutors are trying to do here?
Well, absolutely. And they're going to try and say it's kind of a tapestry, whereas Jedi kind of background, you know, that they're not getting into character evidence. And Gene, I was waiting for you to say something irrational on that, but because you're exactly right. I mean, it's not permissible. And the judge gave a little bit of latitude and then snapped it back and said, that's all you're going to get.
Yeah, I see that as well. It's just, you know, let me just say, it's just so pleasant to have both of my guests rather fervently agreeing with one another. I guess I'll be the one that will have to agitate the situation at some point here. But look, let's listen to some more testimony from that bandmate, a friend to the victim.
Mr. Huntsberger, did you, once the road ranger got there and he was unable to assist Corey Jones, did you leave before the road ranger, or did you
No, I was still there after. I stayed there for maybe like 30, 40 minutes, something like that. We had tried, I tried to call my AAA, and then he didn't want to do that, and then I offered him a ride home. He didn't want to leave his drums. He said he had a lot of, you know, valuable stuff in there. I was like, we'll just put him in my car. But then he said he had a church gig, so, and he needed his car for the morning, so he wanted to stay there with his car, I guess. Here's what he determined.
All right. So you said you stayed with him for maybe 30 to 40 minutes afterwards, and when you realized that he wasn't going to leave his drums with his car with his drums in it, did you then leave?
Yeah, I left. I don't remember exactly the time, maybe 2:40, 2:30, something like that, roughly.
Now, after you left, did you have any more contact with him once you left him there?
No, that was it.
Did you hear at what point did you hear what had happened?
Not till Monday. Someone had sent me a message on Facebook regarding what happened, and I was like completely shocked. I couldn't even believe that.
Pause there. New question.
All right, testimony there yet again from a bandmate who was a friend to victim Corey Jones. So, Ann Bremner, Gene Rossi, I saw you both looking down there while we were playing that, and I think you probably were looking at Florida Evidence Rule 90.404. Yeah, there it is. It better be the Florida version of it, Gene, because if it's not, then, you know, look, we've seen unique things in Florida before and in some of the other states. So I'm seeing it here. I'm on 404 1B1 and 1B2 here. Evidence of a character trait of peacefulness of a victim can be offered by the prosecution in a homicide case to rebut evidence that the victim was the aggressor. That's exactly what we're watching go down here.
And guess what? I made an irrational statement.
I don't know if you made a completely irrational statement. I think that you were citing the general impermissibility of character evidence, but you didn't look at the exception, Gene.
You're absolutely right. But you know what? The judge was wrong then.
Wow. Explain it. Go down that train of thought.
He cut off the witness who was trying to describe the demeanor and the character of Mr. Corey Jones, and he said, quote, "I'll give you some leeway," but he barely got anything out. So, you know, the defense attorney did not object, but I think the jury got it anyway. But the judge academically should have allowed him to give a little more meat on the bones.
Okay, Ann Bremner, what do you think? Do you still agree with Gene Rossi here on this, despite his admission that he misquoted the rule?
Now you got me. Like, see, you were right. You're going to take us on, and I don't agree. So we're at the end of our love fest on all of this. But I think he is right, and you're right. I mean, there's a general rule, and you have the exception. And frankly, I think when I try these cases, and you deal with also specific acts of misconduct and things like that, I always have to go back to the rules, like we all were doing on the break, because they're just kind of archaic and difficult to recall and use, because this doesn't come up that often except in a case like this.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't come up that often, and a lot of times, even if prosecutors could bring it up, they don't want to open the door, because once you open the door to some of this evidence, then you can wind up getting the other side bringing in, say, oh, no, wait a minute, he wasn't a peaceful person, look at this, look at that, and then you get all of this examination into someone's less than illustrious previous criminal escapades, I guess. here, it's a unique opportunity when prosecutors can use this rule to their advantage. And here, presumably, they felt like they had it, and Gene, they felt like they could take this opportunity.
Yes, that's right. And I'm not the Pope. I'm not infallible, so I admit my error.
Gene Rossi, well, you know, hey, if you're planning to run for the chance at ordination, we'll give you the chance. So again, we're going to be back with more testimony in the Nouman Raja case when we return here on the Law and Crime Network. The case of a former police officer who was not wearing a uniform, pulled up in an unmarked van, no logo, no lights, no nothing, no license plate that said police, pulled in front of a stranded motorist by the side of the road, got into an altercation, and shot and killed that motorist. We'll be back with more in just a moment here on the Law and Crime Network.